Okay, welcome back. So today I'm going to be going over what I think the key observations were to make about the pyramids and that sort of outline the Egyptian achievements in stone architecture. So we'll be going over that slideshow now. All right. So first thing, the pyramid stones. We'll go through all of these. I do like this image because it just gives you a real sense of how immense the pyramid is. But one thing to note, just from the get go in this one is. Now the another thing to notice about the stones is that these stones are pretty large. They're significantly larger than anything we saw in the when we were looking at those simple stone structures. Now it's a little difficult to tell just how large because we don't have much of a size reference. But another thing to note is that they're not exactly the same shape, but they're pretty similarly shaped. So we'll take a look at a couple other examples. Like here's another one. And I like this one because it gives you a sense of some people here, and then you get to see just how big these stones that make up the pyramid are. So these stones that make up the pyramid are a lot bigger than these people, and a single person is definitely not going to be able to move these stones. And again, we get to see that while they're not identical, they are somewhat similarly shaped. And we don't see a lot. They're kind of rectangular. We call this a cuboid shape. And we don't see a lot of stones this shape just kind of sitting out in the wild. This is something that needs to be done in order to get them in this shape. So something worth keeping in mind. Whoops. Zoomed. Right. So here is a third view of some of these rather large stones. So again, you can really see, particularly here, that these stones have definitely been shaped. You're not going to get, particularly this stone right here, you're not going to get a really long stone that looks like that in that shape. You're going to have to make that yourself. So this is something that we can kind of take away from these. These stones are very large stones, and they are shaped by some means. So these are two things that the Egyptians were able to do, and these are two really important achievements that really do improve on the on what was possible when it came to stone structures. Another example, this is the stones from the temple. I really do like the way, you can really see neatly how these stones are shaped to fit together very, very well. Quite an achievement when you think about it. So yeah, rather sort of impressive thing. But very similar to what we were already seeing. Now, this one, the next two are top views of the pyramids, and the shadows do look kind of neat. You can see there's a large number of smaller pyramids down here, and you have the two particularly large pyramids kind of setting off by themselves. You can also see from the top, you can see sort of these entrance complexes into the different pyramids here. I believe most of these were part of the original temple complexes. Some of them may have been added later, but yeah, I think for the most part these were part of the original temple complexes that were associated with the pyramids. Now we've got another one, so I want to show this one. It's a little bit closer view. You can only see the two large pyramids there, but one thing to notice, the thing I wanted you to be able to pick up from this is that the shape of the pyramid it's a simple shape, but it's harder to make than you might imagine. It's a perfect square. So the ability to make a perfect square, you don't have a lot of structures out in nature that just come in perfect squares. So think about if you wanted to make something that was a perfect square. It turns out these pyramids are perfect squares. they're hundreds of meters long on their side, and they're perfect squares to within a few centimeters. So quite impressive to get that close to being a perfect square. So think about what you need to have in order to make a perfect square like this. Think about what technology you might need, how you might do that. If you had to do it yourself, without a computer or something like that. It's easy to do when you can just tell PowerPoint to make a square for you, but they didn't have that option. So how would you make a square? Kind of an interesting question there. Same thing. You can see they look more like diamonds just because of the angle, but basically they're squares that have been rotated on their sides there. So then we get to some of these temple columns. Now this is something that I wanted to draw on from last time, but there's a couple of things that need to happen in order for these temple columns to work and to maintain stability. One, you need the ground to be level. Okay, and it turns out this is just as important for the pyramids. If you're going to stack this gigantic pile of stones, you need to make sure that the ground is level. If the ground isn't level, then you're going to have things maybe sliding, and the bigger you make it, the more just minor imperfections in level start to matter. The other thing they're going to need is they're going to need to make sure that these columns are perfectly plumb. Now, as a reminder, what that means is it means that they're vertical. So anyway, you need to make sure that these structures are perfectly plumb. That's going to be rather important to do. So think about how you would do that. How would you make sure that the floor was perfectly level? How would you make sure that the pillars were perfectly vertical? So not an easy thing to do, not at all obvious, and we can see that this definitely wasn't done in the simpler structures. But the Egyptians would have had to have been able to do this. So think about how that might be possible. All right. So this last image, I'm going to sort of leave that as a mystery for you. What's going on here? It is relevant to some of the things we've discussed so far, but you take a look at what you can see the pyramid in the background. Take a look at what's happening there and see if you can figure out what this area off to the side of the pyramid is. Maybe you can even try and find it in the aerial view. I don't know that I was able to. I don't know that I was able to see it closely enough, but take a look at it and see if you can figure out what it is that you're looking at here. And that is about all I wanted to cover. So things to think about as you're answering these questions. How did they get the stone? We already saw that these stones were very large and that they were shaped. So how did they get it? How did they make the pyramids into perfect squares? It's another thing to think about. How did they measure perfectly vertical? How did they measure plumb? How did they get the ground level? This would have been really important. You saw how that post and lintel failed very quickly if the ground was not level. Now I made it very unlevel, so it wouldn't be as big a deal if it was not quite so bad. But nevertheless, when you're dealing with really heavy stone, you don't want the ground to be unlevel because you do not want these things to collapse. There are the image credits. You can see those if you want to. Anyway, that is all we have for the observations. So go ahead, answer those questions to the best of your ability, and then go ahead and watch the explanations video, and that will be the last portion of this section after you finish those questions. So thank you. I'll see you next time.